She was a young mother, devoted to her family.
She was a provider, a protector.
She was a person that gave her all.
There's nothing that she would not do for her child.
But there was one thing missing.
She wanted to be loved.
She thought the time clock was ticking away.
Until she met the man of her dreams.
She thought he was actually the one.
She was really excited.
They began to talk marriage.
But would wedding bells ring?
It was very, very hard to even grasp what was going on. I didn't know what to think, who to believe, what to trust.
Or was there more to this love story than anyone knew?
You're dealing with someone that has a controlling personality that was living this double life.
Take this.
And the truth is gonna hit closer to home than you think.
You know this gentleman?
July 11th, 2011. It's a quiet Monday in River Forest, Illinois, an upscale suburb on Chicago's north side.
River Forest, Illinois, is one of the wealthiest suburbs in the Chicagoland area.
It's just a beautiful town in the middle of a really otherwise urban surrounding area.
People come from the other communities around us to walk, to jog. We're really just known as a safe community.
But this affluent community is about to be rocked by a shocking crime.
Oh my God!
Around 10 p.m., the police got a frantic 911 call.
911, what's the industry emergency? Hello? What's the address?
The caller is 39-year-old Devin Bickham Sr.
He was absolutely distraught. He was hysterical, he was crying, he was screaming.
Eventually, he managed to tell the dispatcher that he was calling from a popular park in River Forest.
What is going on?
The victim is 29-year-old Shervon Alexander.
Mr. Bickham stated that they were sitting in their vehicle when a guy ran up to them and shot at the car.
Who shot your girlfriend?
Devin said it all happened very fast, and he didn't get a good look at the shooter.
Is your girlfriend breathing?
He just kept repeating that she was gone.
Okay, we're gonna send help you, okay?
For Chicago native Shervon Alexander, family was always number one.
We did a lot of things together. We had a lot of fun. We would laugh a lot.
She was just joyful. She loved family. She truly loved family.
She was always such a happy person, lovable person.
But Shervon also had a serious side.
She was interested in law enforcement.
She went to college. She got her associates in criminal justice, and then she went on and got a bachelor's in criminal justice.
She wanted to make a difference.
However, despite her academic success, Shervon considered her greatest achievement in life to be her 9-year-old daughter, Ayanna.
Ayanna, that was the joy of her life.
She was like a best friend. She was a hero. To have someone like that in your life, you could be very lucky. She was a provider, a protector, an individual that just was selfless and always there for me.
Shervon was a wonderful mom. She was a loving mom.
It hadn't always been easy, though, since Shervon and Ayanna's father were no longer together.
She believed she found love for a while, but it was young, so it wasn't nothing stable enough for her to keep her the long run.
She was looking for love. She wanted to settle down.
And in 2010, Siobhan met a man who promised to make all her dreams come true, Devin Bickham Sr.
He was an ex-Chicago police officer.
He was also an entrepreneur.
Devin had a business delivering furniture for several big retailers.
And he knew how to treat a lady.
You look great.
Thank you. So where are we going tonight?
It's a surprise.
They would have nights out on the town, just really enjoy each other.
Siobhan found her Prince Charming. He swept her off her feet.
She loved him so dearly.
Devin also made it clear that he was more than willing to become a father figure to Siobhan's little girl.
He tried to build a relationship with her daughter.
Hey! It was pretty cool. He would want myself to call him Dad.
Devin had an older son from a previous relationship, so he wasn't new to the whole dad thing.
Devin Sr., he would bring him around. They all play basketball together.
Hey, Ayana. How you doing, pretty girl?
I think they'll go on.
So I hear you like to play basketball.
He was such a kind person whenever I was around him. That was the brother I never had, seriously.
In fact, Devin and his son were such a welcome addition to the family that in just 6 months, Devin and Siobhan were engaged.
They were talking about who's going to be the bridesmaids, what their colors was going to be and everything.
I was glad for her because I felt if anyone deserved true love, she did.
But now, Siobhan may never walk down the aisle.
Devin had just called 911 to report Siobhan had just been shot while sitting in their car at a park in River Forest.
Waiting for police to arrive, Devin dials Siobhan's mother. But it's Ayana who picks up the phone.
Hello? My grandma and I were at the table playing cards, and he calls saying, your mom has gotten shot. And originally, I just took it like, stop playing. He said it again, and at that moment, it just felt so surreal.
Hello? Slow down, Devin.
Devin was, crying, hysterical.
Just sound delirious,
What?
Eventually, the message came through.
By then, I knew it was real.
When first responders arrive at the scene, Devin is still in a panic.
When I first arrived on scene, I saw Devin Bickham Sr. screaming frantically and on the phone.
The police found Miss Alexander in the passenger seat with multiple gunshot wounds.
However, contrary to what Devin told the dispatcher, Siobhan isn't dead.
She was actually still clinging on to life. There was still hope that Siobhan would make it.
But while EMTs race Siobhan to the hospital, will detectives be able to piece together what happened?
No one was prepared for what they'd uncovered.
It was terrifying.
And it probably became one of the more bizarre cases that our agency has investigated.
Seven months into their whirlwind relationship, Devin Bickham and Siobhan Alexander were planning a wedding.
She did express to me that he loved her and that she loved him and that she was ready to settle down.
Looked like to me we was getting ready to get us a wedding going.
But will the happy couple ever say, I do? At 10 o'clock on the evening of July 11th, 2011, Devin makes a panic-stricken 911 call from a suburban Chicago park.
Your girlfriend got shot?
When the emergency crew got there, they get her loaded up and go to the hospital.
While the ambulance rushes Siobhan to the emergency room, detectives arrive and pull Devin aside for a brief statement.
As soon as we arrived at the park, We started to coordinate information from Devin Bickham Sr.
Still extremely distraught, Devin tries to walk detectives through what happened.
We were just having dinner with the family, man. We just wanted some alone time.
They decided they were going to go to the park just to talk.
They've been to that location before. The park over there is extremely safe. The neighborhood's extremely safe. And of course, it'd be a great location if you wanted to sit there and talk with someone and not worry about being bothered.
But even the safest place can be dangerous.
Once they were at the park, Devin Sr. said that they were talking briefly, and that's when they noticed someone in the bushes.
What is he doing over there?
I don't know. We should probably leave.
While they were talking, a African-American male in a white shirt jumped out of the bushes.
And according to Devin, the man had a gun.
Get down! Get down!
He fired multiple rounds into the vehicle, which struck Siobhan Alexander.
Mr. Bickham said that he rolled out of the driver's side onto the ground to avoid being shot.
Devin says that when the gunfire stopped, he jumped up and chased after the assailant.
Even though Devin wasn't armed, he was a former cop, and chasing after a suspect was still kind of a reflex.
Devin never caught up to the suspect, but was able to give detectives a general description.
He said the gunman jumped in the passenger side of a gray sedan and sped off.
It was last seen going south, so that information was relayed over the radio to other officers in the area.
Then, as the gunman and his driver sped away, Devin had turned his attention back to Siobhan.
Oh my God!
When Mr. Bickham returned to the vehicle, he was absolutely positively sure that Miss Alexander was dead. And that's when he made the 911 phone call.
911, what's your emergency?
Detectives have little reason to doubt Devin's story.
The parking spots where the vehicle was parked was not well lit at all at the time, and really someone would have been able to run up and ambush the car very easily.
He would be obstructed from any view from the street.
His story also fits the evidence detectives find at the scene.
They recovered several shell casings.
Fired by a .380 automatic, they're on the ground outside the passenger side window.
They found the casings exactly where Devin said the shooter had been standing.
But that's not all that confirms Devin's account of the shooting.
We were able to locate a couple of witnesses who were actually inside of the park. They were two juveniles.
They hadn't seen the shooting, but they did hear it.
The teenagers said they were hanging out at the park, and all of a sudden they heard 3 or 4 bangs.
In fact, one of the teens had called 911 almost at the same time as Devin Bickham.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hi, I'm at Priory Park in River Forest, and someone just got shot.
Okay, slow down. Did you see the person that shot her?
We saw someone run.
The teenagers said they saw a African-American male running down the parking lot.
Did you see what kind of a gun he had?
I didn't see anything on him.
They went to go see what it was, and they discovered a man on the phone crying.
His man was just screaming saying his girlfriend got shot.
The man that the teenagers did find crying was Mr. Bickham.
The teen's story had basically confirmed everything that Devin told detectives.
But the biggest confirmation comes less than a half-mile away.
After Devin Bickham gave the description of the vehicle and of the offenders, that car was stopped about 12 blocks away.
Inside were 2 males, and those 2 males were wearing white shirts.
The occupants were taken out of the vehicle.
Is one of them the shooter? While searching the vehicle, officers find a gun.
That gun was located underneath the seat.
The firearm itself, it was a Lorson .380, the same caliber as evidence found at the scene.
It looked like the case was basically solved.
All detectives need is one final confirmation.
We transported Devin Bickham to the area of Harlem and Madison, just north of Madison Street, to identify the two individuals.
Do you recognize either of these as a shooter?
I don't know. It just happened all so fast.
But then, as the officers begin to haul the suspects away, Devin tells them to wait.
You recognize one of them?
Devin said it wasn't because he was the shooter.
Mr. Bickham revealed to them that one of the two suspects was actually his son.
That's my son.
In 2011, Chicago was one of the deadliest big cities in America, with more homicides per capita than Los Angeles and New York City. However, neighboring River Forest is considered one of the safest cities in the metro region, with 1/9 the violent crime rate of Chicago.
Hold on.
Devin Bickham Sr. has just revealed to detectives that one of the men they suspect of shooting his girlfriend, Siobhan Alexander, is actually his son, Devin Jr.
Obviously, this is like a big shock to the police officers.
And it wasn't a random act of violence. I had Devin Bickham Sr. as the caller, and Devin Bickham Jr. was pulled over. That obviously that there was a relationship between the two.
Do you know this gentleman?
Devin also identifies the other man as 35-year-old Cardell Taylor.
Detectives had wondered why Devin didn't say he knew the men in the first place.
That definitely raised a lot of red flags for us, that he failed to initially identify his own son and the other subject, Mr. Taylor, at the scene when the officers had brought him there.
Was it simply shock at the sudden realization that his son might be involved?
Up to that point, detectives hadn't had any reason to doubt Devin's story.
He's the one who provided the description of the male offender and said that he was wearing a white t-shirt, left in a silver car.
Basically, if it wasn't for Devin Sr., the police never would have pulled his son over in the first place.
It's just such a coincidence that the males they were looking for happened to be related to him.
Then, as detectives put DJ and Cardell into the back of a squad car to bring them in for questioning, they get an unsolicited clue.
Police officers hear Cardell tell DJ that he wanted his money.
Yeah, when I'm gonna get my money, playboy? When are you gonna pay me? Can I get the rest of my money?
They could be possibly dealing with a murder for hire.
While officers drive Devin Sr. and the two suspects to the station for formal statements, Siobhan's family races to the hospital.
Officers had called Siobhan's next of kin to tell them where they were transporting her.
I sped and rushed down there as fast as I could.
So when I finally got to the emergency entrance to where they had taken her, I noticed that Darius had made it there.
What I can remember is I asked the doctor, is she gonna be okay? I remember he shook his head and I broke down and started crying.
Siobhan was pronounced dead shortly after her arrival to the hospital.
My mind at the time, I couldn't believe it. But I'm thinking this has got to be a big joke, you know. I couldn't actually believe that my daughter was gone.
The family has barely had time to process the news when detectives arrive.
By the time I arrived at the emergency room, she had already been pronounced dead.
While Siobhan's brother comforts their mom, her cousin steps up to answer some questions for detectives.
He was upset, understandably so. I let him know that we would do everything we could to get to the bottom of whoever was responsible for her death.
I appreciate that.
He really wanted to catch the guy who did this.
Although at that point, he knew even less about the shooting than the detectives.
He told my aunt that he chased after the guy.
Devin had called her and told her someone came out of the bushes and they shot Siobhan several times.
Devin's statements were all very consistent.
However, according to Shervon's cousin, there's one thing Devin hasn't told detectives.
Devin was actually married.
So there's an ex-wife?
Not exactly.
He said that Shervon had recently found out that her fiance was actually still married.
I didn't know he was actually married till later on in a relationship. It was just very upsetting to me.
But now detectives wonder, was anyone else upset about what appears to be a love triangle between Shervon, Devin, and his wife?
When officers were bringing Cardell in, he made a strange statement to DJ about wanting his payment.
Yeah, why don't I get my money, playboy?
They're already suspicious that Shervon's death was a murder for hire. And Devin Sr.'s wife would have an obvious motive.
It could have been a domestic issue. It could have been the wife who found out about this affair.
Thank you for your time.
Hoping to learn more about Devin's marriage, detectives head to the station to get his formal statement.
When they told Devin that Shervon was dead, he appeared very shaken by the news.
Devin also seems eager to help detectives find out who's behind Shervon's murder.
The first question was about his marriage, and Mr. Bickham did not deny that he was married.
How long have you been married? 12 years.
He was pretty forthcoming about that.
Devin says he'd been just as forthcoming with Shervon.
Shervon knew all about the marriage. However, he did say that his wife was not aware of his relationship with Shervon.
But according to Devin, she was about to find out.
He had been planning on divorcing his wife.
Hours after she was shot to death in a suburban Chicago park, Shervon Alexander's fiance, Devin Bickham Sr., has just told detectives that he was planning to leave his wife in order to marry Shervon.
We set a date to have a small wedding.
But according to Devin, his wife, 32-year-old Tammy Denton, was still in the dark.
I hadn't told her definitely yet.
Mr. Bickham stated to the officers that he was for sure that his wife, Tammy, knew nothing about him and Miss Alexander's relationship.
But now that Shervon is dead, detectives aren't so sure.
Tammy could have gotten wind of Devin's affair and decided to save her marriage by taking out the competition.
And if so, had she recruited her stepson DJ to carry out the plot?
He shouldn't have been here. He should not have been here.
Devin claimed that DJ and Shervon had never had any issues.
Let me see your hands.
But if that was the case, why was he driving what detectives believed to be the getaway car?
After having dinner that night, they decided to go to the park.
Devin said on the way, he got a call from Devin Jr., and he may have mentioned that they're on their way to the park.
My son knew where I was going.
But when detectives ask Devin if he owns a gun, it begins to look even more likely that his son DJ is involved.
I had a weapon that was given to me as a kid, but I don't know where the weapon is.
His wife, Tammy, did not like guns, so he kept it hidden away.
But according to Devin, it had recently gone missing.
It was a 380.
Was it possible Shervon had been shot with her fiance's gun?
We recovered a 380 Lorson, and we had 380 cartridges at the scene over at the park.
The detectives showed Mr. Bickham a picture of the weapon that was recovered in the gray sedan, and he definitely confirmed that that was the missing gun.
That was given to me as a wedding gift.
That gun was actually a gift from Devin's marriage to Tammy.
Which strikes detectives as no coincidence.
It was definitely starting to look like Devin's wife had been behind Shervon's murder.
Asking Devin to stick around in case they have any more questions, detectives move on to his son, DJ.
Detectives thought that if his stepmother was involved and they leaned on him hard enough, he would give her up.
It could have been the son who was upset with his father. The father could have been the target and the wrong person got killed.
Asked about the shooting, DJ denies any involvement.
DJ's alibi for his time during the shooting that him and Cardell were, in fact, at Cardell's girlfriend's house.
And I picked him up. He was on his girlfriend. And where's that? I'm on free and late.
The address he gave detectives was in the same general area that they were pulled over.
But his explanation for how the gun ended up in the car is far less plausible.
He told the detectives that someone had threw the gun into his car.
I didn't say he came in my car and there was nothing about that.
Which we found probably less than truthful.
Why would somebody throw a pistol? I have no idea. I'm just not a sound county.
Especially since DJ's dad has already said the gun was his.
The officers showed DJ the same picture of the weapon, and he confirmed that that was definitely his father's firearm.
What are the chances that your father's pistol is used in the shooting that somebody randomly throws into your pocket? Okay, that's a pretty big yes, right?
Realizing he's in over his head, DJ says he's ready to tell detectives the truth.
He said that after he and Cardell left Cardell's girlfriend's house, that Cardell directed him to a place near the park.
Okay, he was going to take a lot of
DJ tells detectives Cardell directed him to a street corner near the park.
Cardell got out of the car.
I'll be right back. Bye.
He said a few minutes later, he heard gunshots. And after that, he saw Cardell run into the car.
Go, 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 drive! What happened? Just drive! Just drive!
But detectives still don't buy DJ's story.
Why didn't you tell me you were going there? He didn't. No, he did not.
But under pressure from detectives, DJ finally lets something slip.
Shervon was pressuring him to divorce Tammy.
Obviously, you can't marry someone that's already married.
DJ said the affair his father was having with Shervon had gone too far.
Detectives investigating Shervon Alexander's murder have just had one of their suspicions confirmed by her fiancé's son, DJ Bickham.
DJ said that the relationship of his father and Miss Alexander is what led to her murder.
But even though DJ had more or less named Cardell as the shooter, he wouldn't say why he did it.
He said, make a run for me. I'll give you guys money. We know he always give me gas money in second places. Don't be no problem.
With DJ stonewalling them, detectives turn to 35-year-old Cardell Taylor, the man they suspect killed Shervon.
Right now, we know what you did, you know what you did. Okay? Now what you need to figure out is, what kind of wife can I have while over?
Backed into a corner, Cardell starts talking.
Cardell told investigators, ultimately, probably the most consistent story in the end. He kind of explained how the whole chain of events happened.
He begins by admitting that someone had hired him to kill Shervon.
Who are we talking about? DJ.
But was DJ the mastermind, or simply the middleman?
Is there somebody else involved?
He said he only knew what DJ told him.
DJ's son told you what? He's trying to evade matters. Then who's trying to up their marriage? You don't know her name, but she's trying to up whose marriage?
Cardell's story confirmed DJ's claim that the murder was over his father's affair with Siobhan.
Okay. Did you ever have a conversation with DJ where he mentioned his dad wanted this done?
It seemed very, very likely that Mr. Bickham's wife, Tammy, was behind this hit.
But whoever arranged to have Siobhan killed, her death hadn't cost them much.
What kind of money are we talking? 100? Okay.
And that's amazing how cheap life is, that someone's willing to take anyone's life for $400.
Cardell says that once they'd agreed on the price, DJ had picked him up and they'd driven to the park.
What did you do while you were in there?
He took some Vicodin, some Oxycontin, and he said he passed out in the passenger seat of DJ's car.
Sometime later, DJ woke him.
Dale, Cardell, take this.
He told them that he got the murder weapon from DJ.
I'll be right back. Bye.
You done, and you walked across the street. What did the gun look like? It was black. It was black. Okay. You walk across the street, and then what happens?
Cardell said when he walked up to the car, he didn't expect to see Devin Sr. there.
You didn't know he was going to be in the car. DJ didn't mention that she knew this car was my dad, so be careful. You really didn't expect him to be there?
It became clear to us that DJ and Cardell hadn't spent a lot of time carefully planning their actions because it was pretty disorganized.
Get down!
Still, Cardell had done what he'd been hired to do.
You start shooting.
Once they have Cardell's confession, detectives turn back to DJ.
Some other things that come to light that you didn't allude to before, okay?
Now that the detectives have identified as DJ as being the middleman, they are trying to find out if Tammy is behind the hit.
But when detectives pressure DJ about the details of Cardell's confession, he reveals that it wasn't his stepmother behind the murder.
You shooting this gun for what reason? To do the job of my father.
DJ revealed to detectives that his father was the mastermind behind the hit.
Why? Why did your dad want this stuff? Not only that, because he wanted to get rid of it.
DJ tells detectives that his dad started dating Siobhan while separated from his stepmother.
But they told him they got that covered, yeah.
According to DJ, that had caused some problems between his dad and Siobhan.
She was pressuring him to divorce Tammy. She was also threatening Mr. Bickham to tell Tammy about the affair.
So, according to DJ, his father had come up with a plan.
DJ said it was around April or May that his father had asked him if he knew someone that would kill someone for him.
That's when DJ introduces his father to Cardell.
Plan A was to take her to a motel and kill her at a motel. This is as premeditated as it comes.
But according to DJ, on the evening of the murder, his father made a last-minute change to the plan.
Hey,
Hey,
we still doing this?
yeah.
You told me to leave my house. They was going to the park.
Growing up without a mother was difficult. Yeah, I did have a grandmother that loved me just as much, but we all kind of understood that it would never be the same. My mom was like a best friend, like my hero. The person that I know if I'm having a bad day, I talk to, I'm okay. And growing up, knowing I don't have that person anymore, it became so surreal.
Devin Bickham Sr.'s son, DJ, has just revealed to detectives that his father was the mastermind behind the murder of 29-year-old Shervon Alexander.
DJ said that Shervon was urging his dad to divorce his wife Tammy so that they could get married.
DJ also walks detectives through the events leading up to the murder.
He called me and said he's going up to a point.
According to DJ, Devin had coordinated the whole thing.
We still doing that?
Yeah.
When detectives bring Devin Sr. back into the interrogation room, he denies everything.
It wasn't. It wasn't. No.
Even when detectives inform him of DJ's confession, Devin Sr. still denies any involvement.
Devin Sr. begins weeping and says that his son is a liar.
Not that Devin's denials do him any good.
They then went ahead and arrested Mr. Bickham, DJ, and Cardell.
The news that her fiancé is behind the murder stunned Shervon's family.
I just didn't think a human being could have so much hate in their heart to do something like this to somebody that she thought loved her.
It was terrifying to find out Devin had been involved, let alone find out at all that someone that she loved and cared about could do that to her.
Although the family doubts DJ's claim that Shervon was threatening to tell Devin's wife about their relationship.
She knew right from wrong. She was not the type of young lady that would break up a family.
She thought that they were getting a divorce.
I think that when she found out that he was living this double life and he probably was not planning on leaving his wife, I believe Shervon got to a point that, you know what, if that's what you want, that's fine, but I want out. And I believe that's when he decided to take matters in his own hands.
Now it's up to the justice system to ensure that Devin's held responsible for Shervon's murder.
To help secure a conviction, the prosecutors offered DJ a plea deal if he would agree to testify against his father.
But in the end, DJ takes his chances at trial.
For some reason, he thought that they were gonna beat it.
Father and son stand trial together in May of 2014.
Mr. Bickham and his son DJ were tried together in front of separate juries.
The prosecution opens by claiming that Devin Sr. knew exactly what he was getting his son into and exactly what was going to happen that night when Cardell Taylor approached his car.
The whole thing was arranged by Mr. Bickham. It was coordinated by his son DJ, who provided the gun for Cardell.
Then, while Shervon lay dying in the passenger seat, Devin dialed 911 and began covering his tracks.
Devin's frantic 911 call was nothing but an act.
Who shot your girlfriend?
To prove that he did know, prosecutors present the jury with Cardell and DJ's taped confessions, as well as Devin's phone records.
There was significant communication between DJ and his father shortly before the homicide.
The text messages were very specific. Devin Bickham Sr. was asking Devin Bickham Jr. where he was at. It shows the premeditation of everything that took place.
In the end, the jury agrees, finding Devin guilty of murder.
Mr. Bickham was sentenced 95 years with no parole.
I think it was Judge Love that told Devin that she was going to make sure that she give him enough time that only way that he'll come out of there is out of a pine box.
Devin's son also pays a heavy price.
DJ was also found guilty of murder and sentenced to 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole.
A few months later, Cardell Taylor's murder trial also ends in a guilty verdict.
Cardell was sentenced with 70 years with no parole.
I'm glad that Devin Jr. and Cardell will never, ever get a chance to do this to no one else again.
But despite all the pain Devin and his accomplices caused, Shervon's family has found it within themselves to forgive.
I have no hate in my heart for them. I would encourage them, go before God and ask God for forgiveness.
I actually pray every night that each and every one of them have peace with God.
And the family also knows that no amount of time served will ever bring back the one they loved.
My sister's gone, but she's not forgotten.
I miss her so much. I wish she was here.
There's no one else like her that can take that spot or that void.
She's gonna always be in my heart, no matter what.
Of truth, accountability, and justice. Their romance was a textbook example of a young co-ed with a promising future, holding her entire life ahead of her, matched with a dashing young man who swore to love her until death did they part. They seemed exceptionally happy living together, honeymooning, and enjoying all the traditional milestones of early married life. There were no apparent problems, no visible issues, and no outward signs of trouble. Yet, less than 1 year after exchanging their sacred vows, an inexplicable crime shattered their reality beyond repair. She had been stabbed. The scene was described by first responders as devastating. Why her? Why anybody? But the lingering question for those who knew her was definitely, why her? To unmask the person responsible, law enforcement, officers would find themselves navigating a twisted path filled with sexual obsession, deep betrayal, and layers of deceit. The relationship had been passionate, intense, and ultimately dangerous. It was the sort of tragic narrative where observers might remark that truth is stranger than fiction, and that one simply could not invent such a scenario. At the center of the investigation was a killer driven by extreme rage, perhaps even a deranged or psychotic state of mind. The morning of Wednesday, January 30th, 2008, began at 7:30 in the morning. It was a cold winter day in Raleigh, North Carolina. As the sun rose over the city, morning commuters spotted something alongside Interstate 540 that immediately captured their attention for all the wrong reasons. Several drivers heading west noticed what appeared to be a body lying off to the side of the road. As emergency dispatchers received a flurry of 911 calls, first responders raced to the scene. There, they found a young woman lying in the grass. Tragically, assistance came far too late. She had already passed away. The initial assumption made by authorities likely involved the tragic possibility of a pedestrian accident, perhaps someone struck by a passing vehicle in the early hours of the morning. However, upon closer inspection of the woman's body, police officers quickly realized this was no ordinary accident. She had not been struck by a car. She had been stabbed. Investigators could immediately see that she had suffered multiple stab wounds. concentrated around her face and throat. It was unmistakably a homicide. The primary objective became identifying the victim and determining how she had arrived at that desolate stretch of highway. Investigators scoured the area for clues, but there was no trace of a murder weapon, nor were there any eyewitnesses to the tragic event. Officers had to canvass the surrounding area, interviewing drivers to see if anyone had witnessed anything unusual along the busy highway corridor. Among those commuters was a man named Darren Curtis. At approximately 7:45 in the morning, he drove past the burgeoning crime scene and, like many curious drivers, slowed down to observe the police activity. On his way to work on Interstate 540, Darren noticed traffic was heavily congested. He passed the police tape and saw a body covered under a blue tarp just a half-mile further along his commute. He spotted a white car parked on the side of the road that bore a striking resemblance to his wife's vehicle. Darren's passing curiosity rapidly dissolved into sheer panic. The vehicle undeniably belonged to his wife, Latrice. Frantic, Darren Curtis turned his vehicle around and rushed back to the crime scene he had just passed. Detectives on the scene confirmed Darren's worst nightmare. The deceased woman was indeed his wife, the 21-year-old Latrice Curtis. Darren was far from alone in experiencing this profound and stinging loss. Latrice's father soon received the devastating news, recalling the agonizing moment he was told that his daughter was gone. A torrent of emotions flooded his mind, leaving him struggling to process whether to feel overwhelming anger or confusion over whom to hold responsible. In those initial moments, the mind tends to reject reality, hoping against hope that it is merely a bad dream from which one will soon awaken. But this was no dream. It was a harsh and unyielding nightmare that had only just begun to unfold. As police officers attempted to unearth the truth, they would descend into a subterranean world of dark secrets and tangled personal dynamics. It quickly became apparent that everyone connected to the case had something to hide, revealing an extramarital, highly complex relationship dynamic. Latrice Curtis had grown up in a loving household surrounded by several older brothers. As the only girl, she naturally received special attention and a degree of leniency that her brothers never experienced. Blessed with striking good looks and an infectious, radiant smile, Latrice easily became one of the most popular girls during her high school years. She was a natural conversationalist who could approach anyone and strike up an easy rapport. Those who knew her remembered her as remarkably adorable and engaging. It came as no surprise that she attracted a multitude of male admirers. Yet, despite her social popularity, this driven young woman consistently placed her education above all else. Latrice was a dedicated student who possessed a genuine desire to excel in her pursuits. That hard work bore fruit when Latrice was accepted into a local college in Raleigh. It was during her very first semester that she crossed paths with a dashing and ambitious accounting student named Darren Curtis. When they first met in the campus setting, Darren asked if he could take the seat beside her. Sparking an immediate connection, they quickly found that they meshed exceptionally well together. As they worked on their respective assignments, discussing psychology classes and campus life, Latrice and Darren instantly hit it off. It did not take long for the studious pair to become an official item. Their connection felt special and unique in every way, grounded in genuine affection. Soon after they began dating, Latrice introduced Darren to her family. Right away, her relatives sensed that Darren possessed unique qualities. A former National Guard soldier, he presented himself as respectful and mature, rapidly winning over the entire family. After speaking with him, her father's perception changed entirely, recognizing him as a genuinely good young man. Latrice and Darren were so deeply in love that just 1 year into their relationship, they decided to commit to spending the rest of their lives together. Darren proposed, and Latrice happily accepted. Following their wedding, the couple moved into a cozy apartment, and Latrice transferred to the prestigious North Carolina Central University in nearby Durham to complete her degree in business administration. Despite the long hours required by their separate academic commitments, Latrice remained ecstatic about her future with Darren. She was standing at the threshold of adult life, embarking on her married and professional journey with limitless potential. Yet, on the morning of January 30th, 2008, merely 9 short months after celebrating their wedding day, that promising future was violently cut short. This was a senseless and shocking crime that left the community asking how anyone could commit such an act. As police expanded their search for Latrice's killer, they entered a domain filled with hidden desires, where everyone seemed to be guarding secrets. College students Darren and Latrice Curtis had shared a bond that seemed unbreakable, but just 9 months into their marriage, their world was shattered. Surprisingly, one of the earliest individuals to arrive at the vicinity of the crime scene was her husband, Darren, who had encountered his wife's abandoned vehicle during his morning commute. While first responders attempted to console a grieving Darren, investigators began processing the bloody crime scene. Latrice Curtis had been subjected to a brutal assault. She had sustained upwards of 40 stab wounds concentrated around her face, neck, chest, and torso. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords damaged. The sheer ferocity of the attack indicated that robbery was not the motive, as her jewelry, including her earrings, remained untouched. Investigators carefully examined the victim's hands, noting physical evidence of a struggle. It was clear that Latrice had not gone down without a fight, as evidenced by injuries to her fingernails. Crime scene technicians carefully bagged her hands to preserve potential trace evidence before heading half a mile down the interstate to examine her abandoned car. Inside the vehicle, signs of a violent struggle were immediately apparent. The center console was broken, and blood was visible on the driver's side door. The presence of the car so far away from the body strongly suggested that someone, other than Latrice, had driven it last. Furthermore, a DNA sample was recovered from the steering wheel as crime scene investigators submitted the physical evidence from the car and the victim's fingernails to the state crime lab. Detectives contemplated the possible motives behind such a vicious crime. The central question remained: who would harbor such intense animosity toward Latrice, and why execute the attack with such brutality? To investigators, a random crime seemed highly unlikely. A murder committed with this level of violence appeared deeply personal, fueled by profound rage. Stabbing someone 40 times far exceeds the physical requirements of taking a life, pointing directly to an assailant consumed by intense anger. Seeking answers, police turned their attention back to the person closest to Latrice, her husband Darren. During questioning, Darren explained that the last time he had spoken with his wife was approximately 10 o'clock the previous evening. He stated that she had called to inform him she was running late from school and intended to grab something to eat before returning home. Darren stated that he went to sleep around 11:30, assuming she might have stayed late or visited her family. When he awoke the following morning, he tried calling Latrice, but the call went straight to voicemail. Assuming she might still be resting, he showered and left for work at approximately 7:30 in the morning, eventually encountering the blocked traffic and the crime scene on Interstate 540. While Darren's account sounded plausible, detectives found the timing of his arrival at the scene remarkably coincidental. They questioned why he happened to discover his wife's car and arrive at the location prior to any police notification. Although their marriage appeared harmonious from the outside, investigators felt compelled to probe deeper. They requested that Darren accompany them to the station for further questioning. At the station, detectives examined Darren's hands, arms, and neck for any cuts, abrasions, or outward signs of a physical altercation. None were found. When asked directly about their marital status, Darren maintained that they loved each other deeply and insisted there were no problems. He readily granted permission for officers to search his home and vehicle. The search yielded no signs of a struggle or physical evidence linking him to the crime, and detectives released him that afternoon with instructions not to leave town. However, the receipt of Latrice's autopsy report shifted the trajectory of the investigation. The medical examiner discovered a condom inside the victim's body, indicating recent sexual activity. Notably, there were no physical injuries consistent with a sexual assault, suggesting the encounter was consensual. This discovery raised pressing questions regarding the identity of the partner and whether this encounter played a role in the tragedy. Subpoenaing the phone records of both Darren and Latrice, investigators meticulously examined the communication logs. Darren's account of attempting to contact his wife the following morning was verified by the records. However, the logs also revealed a flurry of calls made and received from an entirely different number around midnight, just hours before the murder. That number was traced to a man named Stephen Randolph. The answer to his identity would prove to be a pivotal key in unlocking the mystery of Latrice's
death.
Stephen Randolph was known on the campus of North Carolina Central University as one of its most eligible bachelors. An attractive and athletic young man, he played basketball and aspired to establish a professional career in the National Basketball Association. While friends were initially uncertain about the exact nature of his connection to Latrice, they acknowledged that the two had grown close in recent months, frequently socializing and flirting. Determined to uncover the truth, police sought out Stephen Randolph. Just 2 days after the discovery of Latrice's body, Stephen walked into the Wake County Sheriff's Office accompanied by his roommate, a local pastor named Robert
Reeves.
Stephen walked through the front doors calmly, announcing his desire to speak with detectives regarding the Latrice Curtis case. Led into an interrogation room, Stephen initially downplayed his relationship with Latrice, claiming they merely shared a few classes together after meeting. In September, when pressed by detectives presenting the phone records and autopsy findings, however, Stephen altered his account.
He admitted that they
shared a private relationship that had recently evolved into a passionate sexual affair. Stephen explained that Latrice had visited his home on the night of the murder for their second private encounter. During intimacy, a condom had become trapped inside her, and they had been unable to remove it. Latrice reportedly told him she would attempt to resolve the issue at home and left his house around 10 o'clock in the evening, with Stephen departing shortly thereafter to clear his head. According to Stephen, he drove around before visiting his girlfriend, Thelma Newton. Shortly after his arrival at Thelma's home, Latrice allegedly began bombarding his cell phone with calls, agitated by the realization that she was returning home to her husband with another man's used condom inside her body, while also discussing the improbable possibility of pregnancy. Stephen insisted he had nothing to do with her murder. To verify these claims, investigators turned to Stephen's roommate, Robert Reeves, a 43-year-old pastor known as the bishop within the evangelical community of Durham. Reeves worked as a charismatic motivational speaker.
When
interviewed, Reeves explained that he had met Stephen at a car wash in the late summer of 2007 when Stephen was experiencing financial hardship and seeking a place to live. Reeves had offered him a basement apartment in his home for a nominal monthly rent. Regarding the night of the murder, Pastor Reeves confirmed that Latrice had visited Stephen while he himself was preparing to attend a church service. Reeves stated that he left the house at approximately 8:15 in the evening and returned around 11:30, noting that both Stephen's and Latrice's vehicles were gone upon his return. Furthermore, Reeves mentioned that the following morning, Stephen had confided in him about the late-night phone calls regarding Latrice's desire to take their relationship further. Armed with this information, police considered whether Latrice's emotional investment in the affair contrasted with Stephen's casual attitude and whether An unwanted pregnancy could have been perceived as a threat to his basketball. Career aspirations. Additionally, Pastor Reeves casually mentioned that Stephen maintained a collection of knives and swords at the home. Acting on this information, law enforcement executed a search warrant on Randolph's home and vehicle. Hours of searching yielded no signs of a struggle or a potential murder weapon. To verify Stephen's alibi, detectives interviewed his girlfriend, Thelma Newton, who confirmed that Stephen had arrived at her apartment around 10 o'clock and remained until approximately 1 in the morning. While this timeline aligned with Stephen's statements, the coroner's estimated time of death for Latrice placed it between 1 and 2 in the morning, leaving Stephen's alibi open to question. During her interview, Thelma maintained Stephen's innocence and revealed another layer of tension. Both she and Stephen had recently received numerous anonymous, threatening phone calls warning Stephen to alter his behavior or face physical harm that could jeopardize his athletic career.
Furthermore, Stephen had
discovered all 4 tires on his car slashed one night outside Thelma's apartment. Before detectives could fully analyze the significance of the vandalism and threatening calls, they received critical information from State Trooper Isaac Cooper. Cooper recounted a routine traffic incident he had investigated along Interstate 540 on January 30th at approximately 1:30 in the morning, just hours before Latrice's body was discovered. While checking a disabled vehicle on the eastbound shoulder, Cooper had spotted a white vehicle with its hazard lights flashing on the opposite westbound side of the highway, matching the description of Latrice Curtis's car. Before he could investigate further, dispatch had reassigned him to another call, but not before running the license plate of the first disabled vehicle, which returned to Robert Reeves of Durham, North Carolina. The revelation that the beloved pastor's vehicle was parked on the exact highway where Latrice's body was later found prompted investigators to bring Robert Reeves in for further questioning. During this interview, Reeves denied driving his car that night, claiming he remained at home after returning from church, though he conceded that Stephen Randolph had access to a spare set of keys. When detectives spoke with Reeves's sister, Willa Mae Thorpe, who shared the home, she stated she never saw Reeves at church that evening, directly contradicting
his alibi.
Furthermore, when detectives asked Reeves to roll up his sleeves, they observed deep scratches on his arms and hands. Reeves claimed he sustained the injuries while moving a heavy desk with Stephen, an account that Stephen flatly denied. During a subsequent interview, Stephen also recounted a bizarre incident involving Pastor Reeves, stating that the pastor had entered his room after Latrice's departure, inquired about their intimacy, and ultimately propositioned Stephen, offering to waive his rent in exchange for sexual favors. Stephen claimed he rejected the advance, following which he and Thelma began receiving the threatening calls and discovering slashed tires. Subpoenaing Pastor Reeves's phone records, investigators discovered that the blocked threatening calls originated from Reeves's own communications, unmasking him as the source of the harassment. Further investigation revealed that Reeves harbored a deep, obsessive infatuation with Stephen Randolph and possessed a hidden history of inappropriate sexual behavior involving other young men. Crucially, DNA analysis conducted on samples recovered from Latrice's vehicle yielded a mixed profile matching both Latrice and Robert Reeves. This physical evidence placed the pastor's genetic material inside the victim's car, supporting the theory that Reeves had followed Latrice from his home onto the highway on the night of the murder. On February 2, 2008, police formally charged Pastor Robert Reeves with the murder of Latrice Curtis. The announcement sent shockwaves through the religious and local communities, where many initially found it difficult to reconcile the charges with his public persona. The trial commenced on September 29, 2009.
Prosecutors
Presented a narrative centered on Reeves's obsessive jealousy regarding Stephen Randolph and his rejection. They argued that Reeves followed Latrice from the house, forced her vehicle to a stop on the interstate, and launched a brutal attack in a misguided attempt to eliminate what he perceived as an obstacle to winning Stephen's affection. The defense attempted to cast suspicion back onto Stephen Randolph, highlighting the presence of Stephen's DNA under Latrice's fingernails and arguing that Stephen had both the motive and access to the pastor's vehicle. Prosecutors countered that Stephen's DNA was readily explained by their recent consensual intimacy, whereas the abundance of Reeves's DNA inside the victim's car, combined with his contradictory alibi, physical scratches, and proven obsession, pointed conclusively to the pastor's guilt. On October 9, 2009, following 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charge of first-degree murder. Robert Lee Adams Reeves was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of
parole.
While the verdict brought a measure of accountability, the profound grief experienced by Latrice's family and husband, Darren, remained an enduring legacy of a crime born from dark obsession and profound personal deception. There is an old saying among those who labor in the relentless pursuit of justice: the earth holds many secrets, but it rarely keeps them forever. Sooner or later, the ground speaks, the silence breaks, and the carefully constructed illusions of wicked men crumble beneath the weight of objective truth. When human beings give themselves over to dangerous obsessions, unbridled possessiveness, or dark delusions, they often convince themselves that they are clever enough to outsmart the law. They believe that a stretch of quiet highway, a locked hotel room, or a smoky backyard patio can permanently swallow their misdeeds. Yet, they consistently underestimate the dedicated men and women of law enforcement, the exactitude of modern forensic science, and the indestructible spirit of grieving families seeking accountability for those they
lost.
This narrative chronicles 3 tragic, real-life cases where promising lives were brutally stolen by those consumed by envy and control. Yet, in every instance, the truth triumphed over deceit, unmasking the guilty and ensuring that justice was served. Book 1, The Dark Vale of Raleigh. Chapter 1, A Cold Sunrise on Interstate 540. The morning of Wednesday, January 30, 2008, broke cold and crisp over the city of Raleigh, North Carolina. The winter air carried a biting chill as dawn began to paint the horizon in soft hues of gray and pale amber. On Interstate 540, a busy highway that circles the northern perimeter of the city, early morning commuters were easing into their daily routines. Headlights cut through the lingering dusk, and engine hums filled the frosty air. At approximately 7:30 in the morning, the routine morning drive was shattered. As cars traveled westward along the highway, several motorists noticed an unnerving sight along the grassy embankment on the shoulder of the road. Lying motionless in the frosty grass was a figure. Calls began pouring into the 911 emergency dispatch center. Drivers described seeing what appeared to be an unresponsive body lying just off the asphalt. Within minutes, sirens pierced the morning cold as first responders and highway patrol officers raced toward the scene. When officers arrived at the designated marker along Interstate 540, they stepped down into the brush to inspect the scene. There lay a young woman. A brief examination by emergency medical personnel confirmed the heartbreaking reality. She was deceased. Initially, investigators considered the possibility that the victim might have been a pedestrian struck by a passing vehicle in the darkness, a tragic roadside accident. However, as major crimes detectives arrived and examined the body more closely, that initial hypothesis dissolved immediately. This was no motor vehicle accident. The young woman had been the victim of a savagely personal attack. Her body bore upwards of 40 knife wounds, concentrated around her face, neck, throat, chest, and torso. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been slashed open, and her vocal cords were cut. The sheer ferocity of the assault was breathtaking in its brutality. Yet, curiously, the killer had left behind expensive jewelry, including her earrings. Robbery did not appear to be the primary motive. Furthermore, an inspection of her hands revealed torn fingernails and severe defensive marks. She had fought for her life with incredible courage. Detectives called in major crimes officers and forensic technicians to process the site. They bagged the victim's hands to preserve any physical evidence trapped beneath her fingernails. Yet the immediate area offered few other answers. There was no murder weapon present, no discarded sheath, and no obvious eyewitnesses along the busy stretch of thoroughfare. Among the hundreds of commuters trapped in the resulting traffic backup was a young man named Darren Curtis. At approximately 7:45 in the morning, Darren was making his routine drive to work along Interstate 540. As traffic slowed to a crawl, he observed police vehicles, flashing blue lights, and a body covered by a blue tarp on the side of the road. Darren slowed his vehicle, feeling an uneasy knot tighten in his stomach. Just half a mile further down the shoulder of the highway, his eyes caught sight of a White sedan parked quietly by the guardrail. The car looked strikingly familiar. Panic seized him. The white vehicle belonged to his young wife, Latrice. Frantic with fear, Darren pulled over, exited his vehicle, and ran back toward the
police perimeter he had just passed.
He approached the officers in a state of desperation, asking if the person under the tarp could possibly be his wife. Detectives gently verified his worst nightmare: the deceased young woman lying on the chilly embankment was indeed 21-year-old Latrice Curtis. The news spread swiftly, devastating those who knew and loved her.
When
Latrice's father received the tragic call, the shock was overwhelming. He struggled to comprehend how his vibrant, beautiful daughter, a young woman with a boundless future, could be stolen away in such a horrific manner. Latrice Curtis had grown up in a loving home, cherished as the only daughter, alongside several protective older brothers, blessed with a warm personality, striking beauty, and an infectious smile. She had been widely popular throughout her high school years. Yet, despite her charm and social popularity, Latrice was deeply driven. She placed her education above all else, earning excellent marks. Through hard work and determination, her academic success led her to college in Raleigh. During her very first semester, while sitting in a classroom, she met Darren Curtis, a dashing and ambitious accounting student who was also a former National Guard soldier. Darren was respectful, polite, and mature. When Latrice introduced him to her family, he quickly won them over with his honorable demeanor and steady
character.
The young couple fell deeply in love. Just 1 year into their courtship, Darren asked for her hand in marriage, and Latrice joyfully accepted. After exchanging their sacred vows, they moved into a cozy apartment together. Latrice transferred to the prestigious North Carolina Central University in nearby Durham to pursue her degree in business administration. They seemed to be living a textbook romance. They were young, ambitious, deeply committed to one another, and just 9 months into their marriage. Yet on that cold January morning, all their bright dreams were permanently severed along the shoulder of a dark North Carolina highway. Chapter 2: The Clues Beneath the Surface. Detectives with the Wake County Sheriff's Office knew that the key to solving any homicide lay in reconstructing the victim's final hours and systematically examining every individual in her inner circle. When a victim is stabbed 40 times, the nature of the violence speaks volumes. To experienced investigators, such extreme force indicates deep emotional rage, personal resentment, or an intense psychological disturbance.
You do not inflict
40 stab wounds to simply end a life. You do it because you are consumed by wild, explosive hatred. The first person investigators sought to understand was her husband, Darren Curtis. They brought him in for detailed questioning to establish Latrice's
timeline.
Darren explained that he had last spoken to Latrice the previous evening, Tuesday, January 29, at approximately 10 in the evening. She had called to inform him that she was running late from her classes at North Carolina Central University and planned to grab something to eat before coming home. Darren went to bed around 11:30 in the evening, assuming she might have stopped by her family's house and decided to stay the night. When Darren woke up the following morning around 7 in the morning, he noticed she was not in bed. He called her cell phone, leaving a gentle voicemail, asking her to call him back when she received the message. He then showered and left for work at 7:30, only to encounter the crime scene on Interstate 540 shortly thereafter. While Darren's narrative seemed coherent, detectives were trained to be skeptical. It was certainly an extraordinary coincidence that he happened to drive past his wife's murder scene and her abandoned vehicle before law enforcement had even identified her. Detectives took Darren down to the station, unbuttoned his shirt sleeves, and meticulously examined his hands, arms, and torso for any cuts, scratches, or bruises that would inevitably result from a violent physical struggle. They found no marks whatsoever on Darren's body. Furthermore, Darren granted officers complete voluntary consent to search both his apartment and his automobile. Forensic teams thoroughly examined his vehicle and living space, finding absolutely no signs of a struggle, no blood trace, and no physical evidence tying him to the highway crime scene. Meanwhile, an autopsy was conducted on Latrice Curtis's body, revealing a critical piece of evidence. Medical examiners discovered an intact condom inside her genital tract. Forensic examination showed no evidence of physical trauma or injuries consistent with sexual assault, suggesting that Latrice had engaged in recent consensual intimate activity. This discovery transformed the direction of the investigation. It raised profound questions. Whose condom was it? Had an extramarital affair sparked a deadly rage? To solve this puzzle, detectives obtained court subpoenas for the cell phone records of both Darren and Latrice. Darren's records corroborated his account completely, showing his 10 in the evening call and his 7 in the morning voicemail. However, Latrice's phone records painted a far more complex picture. Late into the night of January 29, around midnight, Latrice had exchanged a flurry of frantic calls with a specific cell phone number. Investigators traced the number back to a young man named Stephen Randolph. Chapter 3: The Ballplayer and the Bishop. Who was Stephen Randolph? Detectives quickly learned that Stephen was a prominent 21-year-old student and standout basketball player at North Carolina Central University. Handsome, athletic, and charismatic, Stephen had aspirations of playing professional basketball in the National Basketball Association. When detectives looked into his connection with Latrice, fellow students confirmed that the two had become close over the preceding months. What had begun as casual conversation in shared classes had evolved into mutual flirtation. On February 1, 2 days after Latrice's body was discovered, Stephen Randolph walked into the Wake County Sheriff's Office to speak with investigators. He was not alone. Accompanying him was his landlord and roommate, a 43-year-old local minister named Pastor Robert Lee Adams Reeves. Reeves was a well-known figure in Durham's evangelical community. Affectionately referred to as the bishop, Reeves was considered a highly charismatic preacher, motivational speaker, and community mentor. He had met Stephen at a local car wash months earlier, learned that the young athlete was experiencing financial difficulties, and offered him a basement apartment in his home for a modest rent of $300 a month. When detectives led Stephen into an interrogation room, the young basketball player initially claimed that he and Latrice were merely classmates who occasionally studied together. However, when presented with the phone records detailing their late-night calls and the autopsy findings regarding the condom, Stephen broke down and admitted the truth. He acknowledged that he and Latrice had been engaging in a passionate, secret, extramarital affair. On the night of Tuesday, January 29, Latrice had come over to his basement apartment. They engaged in intimate relations, during which the condom became trapped inside her body. They tried to retrieve it but were unsuccessful. Latrice left his house around 10 in the evening, intending to remove it privately at home. Stephen explained that shortly after Latrice left, he drove over to the apartment of his primary girlfriend, a woman named Velma Newton. While he was at Velma's apartment, Latrice began calling his cell phone repeatedly in a state of distress. She was terrified that she might become pregnant as a result of the incident and was panicked about returning home to her husband under such circumstances. Stephen insisted to detectives that he had nothing to do with Latrice's murder. He claimed he stayed with Velma and never saw Latrice again that night. Detectives then interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves. The minister confirmed that Latrice had visited Stephen at their home that evening, noting that he saw her white car parked outside when he left for an 8:15 church service. Reeves stated that when he returned home around 11:30 in the evening, both Stephen's and Latrice's cars were gone. Reeves added that the following morning, Stephen had confided in him about the midnight phone calls with Latrice. According to Reeves, Latrice had expressed a desire to escalate their affair into a serious, long-term relationship, whereas Stephen viewed it merely as a casual encounter. This revelation offered a potential motive for Stephen, a young athlete on the precipice of signing a lucrative professional sports contract, might view an unwanted pregnancy and an increasingly demanding mistress as a devastating threat to his future. Furthermore, detectives learned that Stephen possessed a collection of decorative knives and swords in his apartment. Police executed search warrants on Stephen's car and living quarters, but found no trace of blood, no biological evidence from the crime scene, and no knife matching the specific wounds inflicted on Latrice. Detectives then turned to Velma Newton to verify Stephen's alibi. Velma confirmed that Stephen had arrived at her apartment around 10 in the evening and stayed until roughly 1 in the morning. However, with the medical examiner estimating Latrice's time of death between 1 and 2 in the morning, Stephen's alibi was not entirely airtight. Yet, Velma offered investigators another extraordinary lead. She revealed that, over the past several weeks, both she and Stephen had been receiving a barrage of anonymous, menacing phone calls from a blocked number. The caller threatened Stephen, warning him to cease his romantic activities or face severe consequences that would ruin his athletic career. Even more alarmingly, just days before the murder, Stephen had walked out to his car to find that all 4 of his tires had been slashed. This was a major revelation. Someone had been actively stalking Stephen, watching his personal interactions and reacting with intense, destructive jealousy. Chapter 4. The mask comes off. As detectives struggled to connect these disparate pieces, a critical call arrived from State Trooper Isaac Cooper of the North Carolina State Highway Patrol. Trooper Cooper reported that while conducting routine patrols along Interstate 540 at approximately 1:30 in the morning on January 30, just 6 hours before Latrice's body was discovered, he had observed a vehicle parked on the eastbound shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. He pulled up behind it to investigate, but found the car unoccupied. Looking across the highway toward the westbound lanes, Trooper Cooper had spotted a second vehicle parked on the opposite shoulder, also with its hazard lights flashing. That second vehicle was a white sedan matching the exact description of Latrice Curtis's automobile. Before Trooper Cooper could cross the highway to inspect the white sedan, dispatch radioed him to respond to an urgent emergency call elsewhere. However, before he departed, dispatch ran the license plate of the first vehicle, the one parked on the eastbound shoulder. The registration came back to Robert Lee Adams Reeves of Durham, North Carolina. The revelation was staggering. Pastor Robert Reeves' car had been parked on the exact stretch of Interstate 540 at 1:30 in the morning, directly across from Latrice's abandoned vehicle, right around the estimated time of her brutal murder. Detectives immediately summoned Pastor Reeves back to the sheriff's office. When brought into the interrogation room, Reeves maintained that he had been home all night, denying that he had driven his car onto the highway or lent it to anyone. He suggested that Stephen Randolph might have taken his spare keys and driven the vehicle without his knowledge. Detectives then interviewed Reeves' sister, Willa Mae Thorpe, who shared the home with him. Reeves had claimed that he was attending a church service where his sister was present on the night of the murder. However, Willa Mae told investigators that she was indeed at the church service, but her brother pastor Reeves was nowhere to be seen. His alibi was entirely fabricated. Detectives sat across from the minister and asked him to roll up his shirt sleeves. Upon inspecting his arms and hands, investigators discovered several deep, fresh scratches and abrasions. When asked to explain the injuries, Reeves claimed he had scraped himself while moving a heavy desk with Stephen Randolph. When detectives questioned Stephen about the desk-moving incident, Stephen contradicted the pastor entirely. He stated that moving the desk was completely routine, there had been no fall, and Reeves had sustained no injuries during the task. Stephen then provided detectives with a startling account of Pastor Reeves' behavior in the weeks preceding the murder. Stephen revealed that Reeves had displayed an unsettling, intrusive fascination with Stephen's sexual life. On one occasion, after Latrice had visited the house, Reeves had come down to Stephen's basement apartment, asking explicit questions about the intimate encounter. Reeves had gone on to ask Stephen if he had ever considered working as a male escort, made graphic inquiries regarding Stephen's anatomy, and ultimately proposed that he would waive Stephen's monthly rent entirely if Stephen would engage in sexual acts with him. Stephen had firmly rejected the minister's advances. Detectives immediately subpoenaed Pastor Reeves' cell phone records. The logs revealed that the mysterious, blocked phone calls threatening Stephen and Velma Newton had been placed directly from Pastor Reeves' personal cell phone. The psychological profile of the crime suddenly crystallized with terrifying clarity. Pastor Reeves was not a benevolent spiritual mentor. He was a deeply closeted, predatory individual who had developed a dangerous, obsessive infatuation with his young tenant, Stephen Randolph. Reeves had been secretly watching Stephen, harboring intense jealousy toward any woman who secured Stephen's affection. When Latrice came to the house that evening, Reeves' obsession turned to explosive, lethal envy. Background checks into Reeves' past unraveled further dark secrets. He harbored a history of prior sexual assaults against young men, maintaining a double life that concealed his predatory nature behind the respectable garb of a community pastor. Forensic lab results delivered the definitive blow. DNA analysis of biological evidence recovered from the interior driver's side door handle of Latrice. Curtis's white sedan revealed a genetic match. The sample contained a profile matching Pastor Robert Lee Adams Reeves. On February 2, 2008, law enforcement officially arrested Robert Lee Adams Reeves and charged him with the first-degree murder of Latrice Curtis. Chapter 5. Justice in the Courtroom. The arrest sent shockwaves throughout Durham and Raleigh. Many members of the local religious community were in total disbelief, refusing to accept that a revered minister could be capable of such horrific savagery. However, on September 29, 2009, the trial of the state of North Carolina versus Robert Lee Adams Reeves commenced in a Raleigh courtroom. Prosecutors laid out a compelling narrative. On the night of January 29, 2008, Pastor Reeves had observed Latrice leaving Stephen's apartment, consumed by irrational jealousy and possessive rage over Stephen. Reeves grabbed a knife, entered his car, and shadowed Latrice as she drove onto Interstate 540. Reeves managed to signal Latrice to pull over onto the shoulder, perhaps by flashing his lights or invoking his status as Stephen's landlord. When Latrice exited her car or lowered her window, Reeves launched a violent assault, dragging her across the highway lanes into the grassy median where he stabbed her repeatedly in a desperate, delusional attempt to eliminate his perceived romantic rival. The defense attempted to create reasonable doubt by pointing out that foreign DNA found beneath Latrice's fingernails matched her lover, Stephen Randolph. However, prosecutors countered that this genetic material was cleanly explained by the consensual intimate contact Latrice and Stephen had engaged in just hours prior to her death. In contrast, there was no innocent explanation for Pastor Reeves' blood and skin cells to be located inside Latrice's automobile, nor could the defense explain away the state troopers' positive identification of Reeves' car on the highway. At 1:30 in the morning, the minister's scratched arms, his false church alibi, or the electronic paper trail of threatening phone calls placed from his
cell phone.
On October 9, 2009, after reviewing the overwhelming evidence, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. Robert Lee Adams Reeves was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. While the verdict brought legal resolution, it left an enduring scar on Latrice's husband, Darren, and her grieving family. Yet justice had prevailed, stripping away the pious facade of a predator and ensuring he would spend the remainder of his natural life behind bars. Book 2, The Shield and the Shadow. Chapter 1, Silence at Morning Briefing. The town of Little Elm, Texas, nestled along the quiet shores of Louisville Lake in Denton County, was known for its peaceful neighborhoods and tight-knit community spirit. In such a town, police officers were not just public servants. They were familiar, friendly faces who knew the residents by name. Among the most popular officers on the force was 37-year-old Wayne Irby, a 6-year veteran of the Little Elm Police Department. Officer Irby was deeply passionate about his work. Tall, strong, and charismatic, Wayne was known as an officer who bled blue, taking genuine pride in walking his beat, checking on local businesses, and ensuring the safety of his community. On the morning of Friday, December 10, 2004, officers gathered in the Little Elm Police squad room for their standard 6 in the morning shift briefing. Roll call was taken, but one key seat remained empty. Officer Wayne Irby was missing. His absence was immediately alarming to his colleagues. Wayne was remarkably punctual, often arriving early to prepare his equipment and converse with fellow officers. Call after call to his cell phone went straight to voicemail. By mid-morning, as phone calls continued to go unanswered, Officer Cynthia Medrano approached Police Chief Waylon Rhodes to voice her growing concern. Chief Rhodes dispatched officers to conduct a welfare check at the residence. Wayne shared with his longtime girlfriend, 36-year-old Denise Miller. When officers arrived at the couple's home, they found the driveway empty. Knocks on the front and back doors yielded no response. The residence was locked and quiet. Investigators then contacted Denise Miller's teenage children, Whitney and Walter. The teenagers reported that they had not seen their mother or Wayne since the previous evening. Whitney recounted a strange phone call she had received from her mother around midnight. Denise had told her daughter that she was out running errands, expressed an unusual, solemn love for her, and instructed the teenagers to get themselves ready for school in the morning. It was completely out of character for Denise to vanish overnight without warning, leaving her children unattended. Investigators realized they were no longer dealing with a routine late arrival. Both Officer Wayne Irby and Denise Miller had inexplicably vanished. Chapter 2. The Scene in the Hallway. Deeply anxious for his partner's safety, Officer Jerry Walker, accompanied by Officer James Wynn, decided to check a small rental home across town that Wayne had maintained during a recent brief separation from Denise. Obtaining a key from the property landlord, Officer Walker and Officer Wynn unlocked the front door and stepped inside, calling out Wayne's name into the quiet house. The interior was still and dimly lit. As they moved into the kitchen, Officer Walker spotted an immediate warning sign lying on the counter, Wayne's favorite fanny pack and his personal cell phone. Wayne never went anywhere without his phone. Officer Wynn turned the corner down a narrow hallway and suddenly froze, drawing a sharp breath. He backed up, looked at Walker, and warned him to stop right where he was. Officer Walker stepped forward and looked down the corridor. There, lying face down on the floorboards, was Officer Wayne Irby. A quick examination revealed that Wayne was deceased, having suffered a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken furniture, and no indication that Wayne had ever seen his assailant coming. The entry wound was positioned dead center at the base of his skull, suggesting a cold, point-blank execution. The discovery sent shockwaves through the department. This was the first police homicide in the modern history of Little Elm, and the victim was one of their own. Texas Rangers and investigators from the Denton County Sheriff's Office were immediately brought in to process the crime scene. Given Wayne's work in law enforcement, initial inquiries considered whether a disgruntled criminal or an individual targeted in a traffic stop might have ambushed the officer. However, those who worked closely with Wayne noted that he was exceptionally genial and had no known violent feuds in the line of duty. Attention quickly shifted to the whereabouts of Denise Miller. Her absence was deeply concerning. Was she a second victim who had been abducted by the killer? Or was she somehow involved in the tragedy? An inspection of the home Wayne shared with Denise revealed that Wayne's uniform hung neatly in the closet and his service belt was on the wall, but his duty holster was empty. His service weapon was gone. Furthermore, inside the master bedroom, investigators discovered a handwritten note authored by Denise. The contents were deeply troubling, hinting at severe emotional distress and contemplating ending her life. Then, on the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home where his body lay, forensic technicians found a second handwritten note signed by Denise. It read, "I am sorry I took both of our lives. Please contact our mothers." The investigation was immediately transformed. Denise Miller was not a kidnapped bystander. She was the shooter. Chapter 3. The Anatomy of Possession. to understand how a domestic partnership could culminate in such sudden lethality, investigators began tracing the history of the relationship between Denise Miller and Wayne Irby. Denise had grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, where she was known as a cheerful, popular student. At 22, she married her college boyfriend, giving birth to her daughter Whitney in 1986 and her son Walter in 1988. Following a divorce in 1995, Denise relocated to Little Elm, Texas, seeking a fresh start for her family. She secured a successful position with a liquor distribution company, demonstrated strong financial discipline, and built a beautiful home for her children. Yet, she longed for a loving companion. In 2003, Officer Wayne Irby had knocked on her front door during a routine neighborhood patrol to inform her that her garage door was open, offering his card in case she ever needed assistance. Wayne was handsome and charismatic, and Denise was immediately smitten. When Wayne called to ask her out on a date, she readily accepted. Their courtship progressed rapidly. Wayne bonded warmly with her two children, acting as a supportive father figure. However, beneath the surface of their romance, deep fractures soon emerged. Denise was prone to intense jealousy and possessed a profound fear of abandonment because Wayne was a charming, outgoing police officer who interacted with numerous citizens daily. Denise became constantly suspicious that he was engaging in romantic affairs behind her back. She began calling his cell phone incessantly, monitoring his whereabouts, and accusing him of infidelity. In December 2003, a volatile incident occurred when Denise showed up unannounced at Wayne's rental property and spotted a woman's purse on the table through a window. Denise knocked furiously on the door. When Wayne opened it to explain that the woman was merely a casual acquaintance having coffee, Denise flew into a rage, physically attacking him. Wayne suffered scratched cheeks and a black eye. Denise initially attempted to file a domestic abuse complaint against Wayne, but when an independent female witness verified that Denise had been the sole physical aggressor and Wayne had merely tried to restrain her, Denise withdrew the complaint. Despite these warning signs, the couple repeatedly reconciled. In 2004, they purchased a house together, yet living under the same roof only exacerbated Denise's controlling behavior. Unwilling to endure constant accusations and violent outbursts, Wayne made the firm decision to end the relationship permanently in early December 2004. He rented a separate home and began moving his belongings out. For Denise, Wayne's definitive departure was an unbearable blow to her ego and emotional stability. On the evening of Thursday, December 9, 2004, Denise retrieved a .25 caliber handgun registered to her stepfather. She drove to Wayne's rental home, where Wayne was quietly unpacking. When Wayne reiterated that their relationship was over and turned his back to continue his tasks, Denise drew the firearm, stepped up behind him, and pulled the trigger, killing him instantly. She then authored the confession note on the kitchen counter, took Wayne's .40 caliber service pistol and fled into the night. Chapter 4. The Gainesville Motel. An immediate all-points bulletin was issued across the state of Texas for Denise Miller and her vehicle. Law enforcement officers were cautioned that Denise was potentially armed with 2 handguns, emotionally unstable, and potentially suicidal. At 4 in the morning on Saturday, December 11, 2004, roughly 24 hours after Wayne's body was discovered, a night manager at a hotel in Gainesville, Texas, received a distress call from a guest in room 147. The manager walked down the hallway and knocked on the door, but received no coherent response. Finding the deadbolt engaged, he summoned a maintenance worker to force the door open. Inside the darkened room, they made a shocking discovery. Lying crumpled on the carpet in a near-fetal position was Denise Miller. She was slurring her words, surrounded by empty alcohol containers and over-the-counter sleeping medications. She had suffered a gunshot wound to her head, just above her eye, and was bleeding profusely. Lying on the floor beside her was her stepfather's .25 caliber handgun. In her vehicle parked outside, officers recovered Officer Wayne Irby's .40 caliber service weapon. Inspecting the service weapon, technicians discovered that Denise had initially attempted to end her life using Wayne's duty pistol. However, she had improperly attempted to load the magazine, jamming a cartridge backwards into the chamber. When the service weapon failed to operate, she had turned her stepfather's .25 caliber pistol on herself and pulled the trigger. The bullet penetrated her skull, causing severe traumatic brain injury. Emergency medical technicians rushed Denise to a regional trauma center, where surgeons managed to stabilize her life-threatening injuries. Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy visited her hospital bedside once she regained consciousness. Placing a recording device near her pillow, Ranger Murphy attempted to question her regarding the events in Little Elm. Denise's physical condition was severely compromised. However, when Ranger Murphy informed her that Wayne had been killed, Denise offered a vacant gaze, claiming she had no recollection of any shooting or harm coming to Wayne. She insisted that she loved Wayne and that he was still alive. In the days that followed, medical evaluations confirmed that the gunshot wound had caused significant physical impairments. Denise was left paralyzed on one side of her body, blind in one eye, and reliant on a wheelchair. Furthermore, she maintained total retrograde amnesia regarding the moments surrounding the murder, claiming her mind was a complete blank regarding the shooting of Officer Irby. Investigators faced a critical question. Was this selective amnesia a genuine neurological result of her traumatic brain injury, or was it a psychological defense mechanism designed to insulate her from the terrifying reality of her horrific actions? Chapter 5. The Trigger's Weight. Despite her physical disabilities, medical authorities determined that following 18 months of intensive rehabilitation and therapy, Denise Miller was mentally competent to stand trial. On July 10, 2006, the murder trial of the state of Texas versus Denise Miller opened at the Denton County Courthouse. Denise was wheeled into the courtroom in a wheelchair, appearing frail, diminished, and quiet. Her defense attorneys immediately sought to leverage her physical state and her third suicide note, recovered from her motel room, which contained a single line stating that she had accidentally shot Wayne and panicked. The defense argued that Denise had gone to Wayne's rental home merely to talk, carrying the .25 caliber handgun for self-harm rather than homicide. They asserted that during an emotional argument, the gun had discharged accidentally, striking Wayne in the back of the head, prompting a blind panic that led to her subsequent suicide attempts. However, prosecutors systematically dismantled the accident theory using objective forensic physics and cold logic. First, forensic ballistics experts from the state crime lab testified regarding the mechanical properties of the murder weapon. They demonstrated that the trigger pull on the stepfather's .25 caliber handgun required between 4.5 to 5 pounds of deliberate pressure to fire. It was mechanically impossible for the weapon to discharge from a casual brush or accidental touch. Second, prosecutors highlighted the physical location of the entry wound. Wayne had been shot squarely in the back of his head from directly behind. A person does not accidentally discharge a firearm into the exact center of someone's skull while standing directly behind them during a conversation. Third, prosecutors pointed to Denise's behavior immediately following the shooting. If a person accidentally injures their romantic partner, their immediate instinct is to call 911, seek medical assistance, and attempt to save the person's life. Denise did none of these things. Instead, she took Wayne's service weapon, authored a note stating she had taken both of their lives, locked the house, and fled. On July 12, 2006, after deliberating for less than 1 hour, the jury returned a unanimous verdict of guilty of first-degree murder. During the sentencing phase, prosecutors reminded the jury that while Denise now appeared frail and disabled in her wheelchair, her physical condition was entirely the self-inflicted result of her botched attempt to evade legal responsibility. Wayne Irby, a dedicated officer who had served his community honorably, was gone forever, leaving behind grieving friends, family, and colleagues. The jury sentenced Denise Miller to 62 years in state prison. Justice had been fully realized, demonstrating that neither self-inflicted injury nor claimed amnesia can erase the legal and moral accountability owed for taking an innocent human life. Book 3, Ashes in the Wind. Chapter 1, The Scholar Who Vanished. In the spring of 2007, 19-year-old Tanisha Stewart was a shining beacon of success for her family and community in Houston, Texas. Growing up as one of 6 children in a modest neighborhood, Tanisha had lost her father at an early age. Rather than allowing hardship to limit her horizons, Tanisha poured her energy into her academic studies. Blessed with sharp intelligence, a vibrant smile, and an infectious enthusiasm for learning, she excelled throughout high school, ultimately earning a prestigious academic scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University in College Station. In May 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant during her senior year of high school, 17-year-old Tanisha had met 25-year-old Tim Shepard. Tim was handsome and attentive, and despite their 8-year age gap, the two began dating. Tim actively sought to win over Tanisha's family, assisting her mother with household repairs, fixing electronics, and presenting himself as a helpful, respectful partner. Tanisha's family accepted him warmly into their circle. However, when Tanisha relocated 2 hours north to attend Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University in the fall of 2006, the dynamics of their relationship underwent a dramatic shift. College expanded Tanisha's horizons. She matured into an independent, confident young woman who embraced new academic challenges, made new friends, and began to envision a broader future for herself. Tim Shepard, conversely, grew deeply possessive, jealous, and insecure. He struggled to accept that Tanisha was no longer an impressionable high school student under his influence. He began calling her phone constantly, demanding updates on her whereabouts, and occasionally drove to the university campus unannounced to monitor her activities. During her first semester, Tim briefly broke up with Tanisha to pursue an old acquaintance, but quickly regretted his decision and sought to reconcile. Tanisha allowed him back into her life, but her romantic feelings had cooled significantly. In College Station, Tanisha had formed a warm, positive friendship with a male fellow student named Mark Marks. Mark was charming, articulate, and age-appropriate. Tanisha realized that her future lay forward with new opportunities, not backward in a suffocating relationship. In mid-March 2007, Tanisha returned home to Houston for spring break. She planned to attend a concert featuring the artist Beyoncé with her female friends and spend quality time with her family. On Thursday, March 15, 2007, Tanisha visited Tim Shepard at his apartment complex on Cumberland Drive in northern Houston. She